Okay, it is 2:33, so let's get started. Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. Today is Saturday, so it's Stoics Saturday. We've been going through Massimo and Greg's handbook for the new Stoics. Today, we are taking a break in the middle to take a larger perspective. We're just going to go around and each of us is going to be talking about what Stoicism has done for us and what it does for us. You can take anywhere between 2 to 4 minutes to talk about it. And after that, we'll take a few questions and then we will do breakout rooms. We'll come back, share our takeaways. Feel free to talk about your experience of doing the course or the handbook, anything that you want to bring up. And then we will look at the themes that come out of the takeaways and we will do a discussion. So that's the plan. All right. So I'm going to just call on people. If you do not want to participate in sharing what you've gotten, you can just type skip and I'll skip you. So we'll start with Joe. Let me see who else is here. Joe, Deborah, and Daniel to start with. Joe, go ahead. Well, so the question is, what has Stoicism done for you, and what does Stoicism do for you?
I mean, it's been transforming in the sense that it's allowed me to become a lot less anxious. The first thing by, knowing what's in my control, not, and what is not in my control. I'm starting to be able to create space and say, okay, how do I act in a meaningful way? And all of a sudden I've noticed my anxiety dropping with certain things like journaling and giving me a process to ask myself the right questions on how to live a virtuous life is actually been, I've always kind of lived that way. But now I actually have a context and a process, and I am creating a lot more space, and I'm a lot less anxious, because of that. Another thing that it has allowed me to do is to have a lot of gratitude towards other people and for what I have had. So you once you're taking inventory, you appreciate what you have done well for the day. And it's very easy to overlook what you have done well when you don't necessarily focus on it. It's easier to focus on what is going wrong or some of the things that, may not be going our way. So that at the end of each day, saying what I've done well, again, is another way of decreasing my anxiety. And again, I think if I had already mentioned, the idea of suspending judgment has also been critical in this process as far as driving down my anxiety, but also allowing me to interact with others in a more virtuous way, including my family. So I'm selecting my words a lot more carefully, hopefully saying less. So that's another benefit that's actually come out of this. And I think overall, to sum up, and I don't want to take up all the time here, but to sum it up is I'm becoming more self-aware and I'm accepting myself. And that's what Stoicism has provided me a framework for how to do that. And that's been it's been a life-altering process in the sense that it provides you with a certain level of hope that you wouldn't have otherwise have had. So, and the last thing I'll just say, there's the intellectual aspect of it as well, that it challenges you to think at a higher level. And, some of the speakers that you've had, whether Massimo, Greg, or any of them actually, that they have, they've talked to you about topics, and it's a reminder of how to challenge yourself to think more at a higher level. And then, that's just an added benefit. So I'll leave it there because I took up enough time.
Joe, that was great. Thank you. Thank you. Next up is Deborah. Deborah, what has Stoicism done for you?
Okay, I'll try not to talk too much. I really love it a lot. I don't even know how to emphasize that. And you'll be surprised I'm going to use this word, structure, because I'm like, people always say I'm a free spirit, but being a free spirit, you obviously have to have a structure in place as well in order to achieve your goals. So I would say Stoicism gives a structure or a template. We also call it an anchor. In teaching, we talk about that a lot. Like we'll use a book and that's our anchor that we always refer back to. So it's like a referring back to Stoicism. And in particular, one strategy that's worked really well for me recently is the do the opposite. Mm-hmm. That has been unbelievably transformative to me because I've been struggling to get back into shape. And I've been a runner my whole life, but since I became a teacher, mentally I didn't want to do it. And so I had to get back into it. And so it's simply, at the end of the day, I don't feel like exercising. Okay, I need to do the opposite. I need to get myself to do it. And so I started my running program again. Also food choices, because I'll be at the grocery store. Oh, I feel like rewarding myself with some chocolate. Nope, do the opposite. Grab something healthy instead. I've also taught it to my students, which is super cool. So they're working on the do the opposite. I said, you feel like making a bunch of noise right now? Do the opposite, and why don't you be quiet? And they've been surprisingly responsive to it. Also not reacting emotionally, kind of what Joseph was alluding to. Mm-hmm. So if somebody does something crazy, whether it's my friends, my family, my students, I am better at going to the intellectual side of it and just analyzing it like that. And then I would have to say, this is going to sound weird. I'm going to kind of give myself a compliment, which is not really socially acceptable, but I'm going to do it anyway. We had to give each other compliments at a teaching meeting, just to be positive. And the principal wanted us to spread positivity about each other. And one of the ladies said she wanted to be just like me. And then she went on to give me a lot of details. And I was just floored. I couldn't believe it. She said, I want to be the woman that you are. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I think that it's been successful. Wow. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Next up is going to be Bruce, Francoise, and Mike S. Bruce, go ahead.
Yes. I think my takeaways are, I can say very briefly, it's loosened my attachment to outcomes that I don't have much control over, mm-hmm. and given me peace of mind by not getting so upset about loss, or kind of, there's the analog of getting upset or euphoric over outcomes that you really desire. And with this course currently, it's increasing my taste for preparedness for difficult situations, and the concept of being able to rehearse and practice and be able to benefit from that.
Thank you. Thank you, Bruce. Next up is Francoise, Mike S., and let me see, Aurora.
Okay, it's quite interesting because I always thought I was an Epicurean and I was not a Stoic. But since I've learned more about Stoicism, it really helped me into my basic principles in life, which is peace, love, and harmony. And the Stoicism has really helped into making choices to find harmony. So it's by the exercise of, which I do not daily, but quite often, between what is control and no control, and focusing on what you have control and leaving the non-control to where it is, because not having control is a waste of time. So by focusing on the control, it really helps to do more in the right direction and find that harmony, which is so important to me.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Francoise. Next up is Mike S., Aurora, and Michael Cotter. Mike S., go ahead.
Yeah, I first read the Enchiridion and the Marcus Aurelius Meditations in my 20s. I like them. They seem like great advice, but I wasn't sure, you know, it looked like, you know, a kind of advice or philosophy to think about, and that kind of was it. In 2017, things in my life were falling apart. My mom was in and out of the hospital, you know, got the notice, you better put everything in order and all those things. So I started looking into Stoicism again, and I got the Daily Stoic, and I learned about Ryan Holiday's website, and it had the, I think it mentioned modern Stoicism, and I learned about Stoic Week. So I've been doing that since then. And so it put having the exercises along with the literature, and also going through Donald Robertson's little courses and learning the backgrounds of these people and how they actually acted and what was the history and stuff, gave a lot more meaning. And it kind of, with you know, Stoic Week, kind of set me up to have some daily exercises to keep me on balance and get through tough times when, you know, everything's hitting the fan, to be able to stay the course. It's really helpful. And I've done similar like CBT exercises. So I'm, you know, very confident about it working. And, you know, that's like that handbook, you know, has the references on each exercise showing how these methods have been proven to be effective and tested, and you know, independent of the Stoic thing. So it's like really helpful in kind of having a daily practice to be on course and getting through life.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Next up is Aurora, Michael, and Caroline. Aurora, go ahead.
Yeah, I am a work in progress, appreciating all the blessings. I'm more accepting now, practicing amor fati. I detach easily to trivial matters, and I'm aware of my reactions. Last May, my father died. I was surprised. I easily accepted what happened, and I haven't been too emotional since then. And now I'm focused on what really matters to me.
Thank you, Aurora.
That's for me.
Thank you, Aurora. Next up is Michael, Caroline, and Dave. Michael, go ahead.
All right. So in terms of how it's helped me, like I said, to think more about what my overall purpose is in life. It's also helped me to be a better thinker and to ask more questions about, like, how do I know certain things to be true, and be a better thinker, but also a better liver or a better doer, in terms of how I live my life. Like, what are my principles? What are my values in life? It's also helped me to figure out my self-worth, that I have self-worth, that I am an individual, a human being who should take responsibility for my life. And in terms of my own happiness, I've come to the conclusion that I am the only one who's responsible for my own happiness. And so why not start today?
Wonderful. That was great. Thank you, Michael. Next up is Caroline, Dave, and Brian Park.
Hey, I'm Caroline. I actually just recently rediscovered Stoicism. And actually, I was watching a TV show. I like never watch TV anymore. It was like a documentary, and it was on Marcus Aurelius. And generally, when I like, it's like when I saw it, I was like, wow, he sounds like a really interesting guy. So I like jump in. I like start looking up all this stuff about him on the internet, and it was really amazing because it was like, you know, talking about Stoicism, and it's like, man, this is stuff that I've always thought, you know, I've always agreed with. I just never realized it was really in one thing. So, you know, as far as like be a good person and, you know, stuff like that. And so that's how so I guess that's how I stumbled upon Stoicism. And now I guess it's not very Stoic of me because I'm very like obsessed with it. I'm like very passionate about it right now. So, but it's like, I just want to learn as much as I can. So I'm really excited to be here. Thanks.
You're welcome, Caroline. Next up is Dave, Brian Park, and Sharon. Dave, go ahead.
Thanks, Shrikant. I was familiar with the term Stoic for a long time, but it's been interesting to learn more about it. I know we're obsessed with success in our culture, and the thing about, you know, just the things are completely under control we should be successful at. But I'm realizing it's always a choice, and there's always going to be things I'm going to try and make attempts, even though I know I'm not under complete control. So it's been fun to think about that. And also, I'm an introvert, and so my boundary of, you know, my psyche or whatever has been small anyway. But it almost thinks about, you know, kind of reduce it a little bit more and realize that things are not under my control, or, you know, things other people doing are not any of my business. So that's been an interesting thought. And kind of on a side note, I want to read some of these ancient texts sometime. It's adding my list of my books I want to get from the library when it reopens. And on a side note, especially reading about Seneca, because there's a town of that name in north central Kansas. It just happens to be where my aunt and uncle met. So I want to read about Seneca sometime. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Next up is Brian, and whichever Sharon wants to talk. So Brian, go ahead.
Hey, I went through a lot of childhood trauma, so it's been a way for me to deal with that. I was anxious as a kid, and the trauma compounded my anxiety. So a lot of things that Joe said, I would echo. And I've always been inspired by people who were unaffected by things and were able to keep their cool in tough situations. I was fortunate to have some really good coaches when I was a kid, and that's really what saved me. And I had some taste of Stoicism early on from them, and in recent years I've really dived into it a lot more, and philosophy in general, and it's been immensely beneficial to me. So I'm very grateful to have mediums like this to discuss it. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brian. Next up is Sharon, Mike, and Leslie. Sharon, go ahead.
Yes, hi. First of all, I want to thank you because 2 years ago I learned about the concept of the philosophy of Stoicism from you. I had followed you on Jordan Peterson, and then was introduced to the meditation. And when I learned about it, I started to cry because I realized this is who I've been my whole life, literally. I've never acted on the basis of feelings or emotions. I've always been consciously aware and planning what is in my best interest since I was a child. And I never knew who I was until I learned about it. It enabled me to live through horrible tragedies quite serenely. And one of my earliest learnings was when something happens, also this is for the good, not seeing the big picture. All the bad things that happened to me, just part of what happens to everyone. Everyone suffers. That's another thing. Everyone has to recover from their childhood. You know, a lot of people feel that they're victimized when in fact we all are hurt, and we all can find ways of getting better. But this just confirms everything, and it's just nice to see, to see these things. I'm trying to advance myself a little more in terms of acting the opposite. That when I see something that's difficult for me, that tells me I need to do it, and that's an advancement that I'm not quite all there at. But I hope to progress. But I really want to thank you for introducing me to this and helping me understand myself better.
You're welcome, Sharon. It's wonderful to have you here as well as in the in-person meetups. So that's great.
I'm in
Next.
California right now, so
okay.
That's not going to happen for a while.
Thank you. Next up is Mike, Leslie, and Steve. Mike, go ahead.
Okay, I've thought I've sort of, before I even knew about what this was about, I thought I was always a Stoic. My philosophy, which I learned from as a nursery rhyme kid from Alice in Wonderland, that nothing bad ever happens in your life. And so Stoicism formalized it at another dimension as kind of the serenity prayer on steroids, and gave us some formal dimensions. The guy who wrote Alice in Wonderland was a mathematics professor at Oxford named Charles Dodson, who operated under the pen name of Lewis Carroll. And so he came up with a lot of the principles, which I learned as a young child. In some respects, I'm still a young child. So there's a lot more to be said, but everybody has said some good stuff, and I'll yield the balance of my time once again.
Well, gratefully accepted, Senator Mike. Next up is Leslie, Steve, and Jeff.
I think initially what I really enjoyed about Stoicism, and I still do, is the intellectual pursuit. And through this forum, it's enabled me to make intellectual connections with new friends. And I really appreciate some of the connections I've made in this meetup. I appreciate the opportunity to learn about Stoicism and learn the meaning of the word Stoic in an academic sense, not in the colloquial manner that people use the term. I'm glad I understand it better now. And I really appreciate its perspective and its tools for me to apply to this concept that, of course, I've heard many times in my life, that our happiness is in our control. And if we want happiness in our lives, it's our responsibility to pursue it and build it. And Stoicism gives us tools.
Thank you, Leslie. It's always a pleasure to have you here. Next up is Steve, Jeff, and Elena. Steve, go ahead.
One of my favorite things about Stoicism, apart from this wonderful meetup, is really like the framework of acting under what's under your control. But what I found really helpful is meditating on what is actually in my control. I think we have lots of self-limiting beliefs, and we might not be willing to admit to ourselves that something's within our control. But having the humility to only act on those things that are under your control, while simultaneously the confidence to assert what you actually have control over, has been something Stoicism's really given me.
Thank you, Steve. Next up is Jeff, Elena, and Rob. Jeff, go ahead. Okay, Jeff must be walking. Next up is Elena, followed by Rob. Elena, go ahead.
Yes, hi everyone, and I truly do appreciate everyone creating a space for development and just exchanging ideas and learning so much. And it's my first time I'm joining a Stoic group in Stoic discussions. I've been exposed to, of course, to the School of Philosophy and knowledge, but then it's what's great. It's about applying the knowledge, applying the concepts in real life. Because if you could learn as much as you want to learn in life, but if you are not practicing, so I'm going to work, you have to be in a state and know how to, and be willing and such. So it's truly like I'm very much excited to learn a bit more about a practical implementation of the concepts. It's truly, once you go out there and act, that's when things happen. So again, I'm just really grateful for everyone being here today. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, me too. I'm just tremendously grateful to see so many great people coming together every day talking about these things, because I think that accelerates all our growths, including mine. Next up is Rob, followed by Marco. Rob, go ahead. Okay, next up is Marco, followed by Wen.
Yeah, I think it definitely the like the what's in my control and what's out of my control. That's a tool that's really like helped me immensely, and it's definitely been like a regular part of my like toolbox. And just like if an anxious situation comes up, I immediately go to that and help in that way. And also, especially like the community. Like it helped me be more accountable to be like to do it to do it more often and regularly.
Wonderful. All right, so I think we've put amazing things on the table. I mean, for me, the primary thing that Stoicism gives me is the dichotomy of control. I think it's a tremendously powerful idea. It's a very simple idea. What is yours and what is not yours, or what is within your power and what is not within your power, what is within your control, what is not within your control. That distinction, I think, just frees you up, dramatically. So that is the biggest thing by far for me in Stoicism. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the breakout rooms next. So, we can talk to each other about our Stoic experience, and then we'll come back here to share our takeaways. We'll do kind of, we'll identify general themes at that point, but I think this is a good time to do takeaways. For whatever reason, if the breakout rooms are not working for you, you just click on leave the breakout rooms and you can come to the main room where I'm going to be there. All right, so I'm starting the breakout rooms now. 4. So Francoise, what did you get from the discussion?
Oh, well, it seems we discussed a lot of things. I'm a little bit lost in all those suggestions about what the Buddhism and meditation and everything related to what can bring you to Stoicism. It's a big consideration. So I don't know. I have to let the sparkle to fall down at the bottom of the toy.
Okay. So let me call on Juliet. Juliet, go ahead. What are your takeaways? What have you gotten from Stoicism?
Oh, dang! Didn't know you'd call on me so fast. Repeat the question, please?
The question is, what have you gotten from Stoicism? What have you learned from Stoicism? How is it making your life better?
I want to pinpoint it more towards what have I gotten through Stoicism from this meetup.
Okay.
group because I was studying Stoicism before, but it stayed very general. You know, what's in your control and what's not in your control. But this meetup group and the Handbook for Stoics has really taken it to a new level and really given me some very practical tools to use in my daily life. You know, pre-meditation, doing the opposite. And I always think of Stoicism as what I mentioned before, what's in your control and what's not in your control. This group reminds me there's another aspect to it, living a virtuous life. So it's just, this group is really taking Stoicism to a much richer level. So I really appreciate it. And I've met some really amazing people in this group, and I just love talking with other Stoics. So thank you so much, Shrikant.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's great to see, you know, so many great people together and, you know, kind of conversing on a continual basis. So what I want to do is I want to take a slightly different tack. Let's talk about the specific ideas in Stoicism that have helped us. So if you want to talk, you can just type in an exclamation. I'm not going to call on anybody. You can just go ahead and type an exclamation mark in the chat in order to share what idea. So what one idea or two ideas from Stoicism you found most useful. For me, it is clearly Dichotomy of Control, because that's like that completely, and that's something, the thing I like about it is that that's something that I can use at any point of time during my day. And I can spend as little time on it or as much time on it as I want. And it produces amazing results every time, because we are always living in a world which is changing all the time. And our experience of it is changing all the time. So it's a dynamic situation. And it is very easy to get caught up into what is going on around us, what is going on within us, and lose the distinctions. So this is a way of kind of refocusing on what is it that you can control, what is it you can do something about. And what that does is it gives you the clarity and the courage to act on what you need to act on, and not get bogged down or distracted by anything. Next up is going to be Joe, Elena, Sharon, and Brian. Joe, go ahead.
I mean, the dichotomy of control is obviously, that would have been one of mine as well. But another one has been really beneficial for me is the view from above, because it actually has allowed me to develop certain maxims to live by that allow me to take a step back and see my role within, whether it be a workplace, whether it be, the community, or whether it be within my family, whether it be, so you gradually, as you take a further step back, and then your role in the world. And so I think that that's something that has allowed me to it's allowed me to step outside myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the greatest benefits to that Stoicism has provided to me yet, is not only to, it's allowed me to understand that I'm living with others and it's not about me. And I kind of understood that intuitively a lot in my life, but that has actually given me a process and a way of looking at it. And there have been times in my life where I have been focused on myself a little too much. And I think that's an exercise that will be a very good control in the future, is that, if you're taking a view from above, you start to understand your own personal insignificance. And I think that to me is somewhat comforting.
Thank you, Joe. Next up is Sharon, Brian, and Elena, Sharon, Brian, and Iveri. Elena, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was in an awesome discussion group, smaller discussion group, and I've learned a lot. So I'm so appreciative. And I was inquiring about the law of reason, and I'm not sure if it's because it's my first time in a Stoic group, and I've learned something that Julia beautifully said. She said that you could move through life, but you could move through life in a harmonious way. And that is something that's truly resonated with me, because of we could fight everything. We could fight what we don't like, what we could fight. We could find so many things to not agree with, but there is a certain way how you could move through life, applying and knowing the laws of nature and laws of reason. And it was one of the greatest takeaways from me. And you do it from a point of an observer, point of someone who could look at what's coming and make an agreement on how you react to what's coming. And that is, again, it's already like a very, very big step in anything in business life, in just generally relationships. So thank you so much again.
Yeah, thank you. That was a great observation. I think kind of putting primacy of nature, kind of accepting nature, that provides you with a base for action. So it allows you kind of the larger picture. So it's a way of kind of, for example, the view from above is a way of showing that, there is nature, and that is just given. And what that does is that it allows you to free yourself up from whatever it is that you are caught up in, either within you or around you. So I think it's a very powerful idea. Now, next up is Sharon. I don't know which Sharon. There are two Sharons. So whoever typed ! Okay, go ahead.
Yes, actually, what I was going to say was pretty close to what everyone else is saying. So you'll please correct my pronunciation. Amor fati, embracing, basically.
A little bit louder or into the mic, Sharon. We are having difficulty hearing you.
Is this better?
Yes, a little better. Yeah, better. Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
I was saying that amor fati, please correct my pronunciation. Embracing your fate, accepting reality, and not bemoaning it. Bad news, good news, and not that we're totally indifferent, but to react in a constructive way and not an emotional way. That is very helpful.
Thank you. Next up is Brian. Brian, go ahead.
I just got the book and I just flipped through it to see if I could find something I could talk of immediately. Analyze anger. So I like the idea of metacognition and thinking about things, but you walk a line. It's a balancing act. You can overthink things. You can be over judgmental of yourself and others. And I think we find ourselves focusing on our differences too much and not our similarities enough. So having discussions like this helps us remember that we're all very similar creatures, and I think that we need to focus on our similarities and not be so hard on ourselves and each other. That's all.
Thank you, Brian. Folks, if you want to share what ideas of Stoicism you found most useful, you can go ahead and type ! in the chat or raise your hand in Zoom. Next one is Ever. Ever, go ahead.
Hi. I want to say thank you, first of all, for the group. It's excellent. I've been coming here now for quite a few months, and it's very exciting to see people actually interested in Stoicism, practically taking it on. I've come to a conclusion that one of the biggest aspects of Stoicism for me is around eretheia or eudaimonia. It's an understanding of pursuing your own sense of excellence rather than I was raised in the West, and the pursuit was happiness. But when you move away from trying to pursue happiness, you're actually really joyful pursuing your best sense of how to be. It's something that I discovered from practicing Stoicism now for a little while, but it's really beneficial. And I think more people would get a greater sense of Stoic understanding from actually pursuing it themselves. So thank you.
Excellent, excellent observation. Thank you, Eber. Next up is Joe, followed by Ven.
Just really briefly, I mean, there are two practices that I could really speak to. I mean, even premeditation on adversity or evils has actually been really beneficial as well to me. I mean, but I've been doing it kind of as a natural progression of understanding the dichotomy of control. So kind of works with that. But the other one is the idea of the obstacle being the way. And I think that that's really allowed me to be a little bit more adaptive in where my everyday life, where I start to look at where I'm working and what I'm doing. And then I start to think of, well, you know, I have a lot of excuses that I could be making. But then I start to try and think of another way to do something. This also can be frustrating, but it's also the understanding that, you know, that the obstacle is the way actually takes away from that frustration, and it's seeing it how it's a challenge to me to be adaptive in an environment. So I found that to be another concept to be extremely helpful to me on a day, you know, almost on a daily basis.
Thank you, Joe. Joe, I missed the first one that you said. This one was the second
premeditation
one.
below.
Premeditation. Okay,
yeah.
got it.
So I mean, that's kind of something where I just do that intuitively now. In rehearsing, okay, how am I going to react to a certain circumstance, and then, you know, what's a virtuous reaction, and that's limited the number of words that I use actually.
Thank you. Next up is Ven, followed by Caroline. Ven, go ahead.
Oh, I think Joseph just said a big part of what I wanted to say. But I think, you know, what I learned most help. It's like the Stoicism, or the idea of the Stoicism, basically is like you know, like an armor for me, you know, that I can wear it, and the most important one is that the structure is actually what, you know, it's what's within within my control, and you can kind of like piece everything together in a way. It has a very, very amazingly a complete structure itself to really being able to deal with this world in a very clean way. You know, like what's within one's control, and what's the you know, premeditation. You know, and every part of all the idea is a piece of the armor, and just. I have tried other, you know, way when I'm facing difficulty. I've tried other way to solve things, but they are always a place that you kind of push to the limit, and then there was no explanation, no guidance. And for Stoicism, kind of give me a really strong structure and a guidance, and in a very clean, in a helpful way. Yeah.
Thank you, Ven. Next up is Caroline, followed by Aurora. Caroline, go ahead.
Hi. On top of what everybody else has said, one of my favorite quotes from Seneca is, "We suffer more often in our imagination than in reality." And I just think that's really, I read that and I was like, ding, ding. So yeah, that was what I wanted to share. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you. Next up is Aurora.
Yes. I practice the Stoic work, Dichotomy of Control. Very helpful. Knowing what you can and what you cannot do. Knowing how you react on things. And I practice the Stoic reframe. It's about when you thought of something negative, or something said negative about you or about things, you can reframe it in a positive way. just like a positive projections. Is like like what the doomers are saying, we're doomed, but you know, we have to stay on a positive outlook, positive thoughts. So it lessens anxiety and depression, and also modeling the sage. It's very helpful for me. Looking for someone to model, like a person of good character. And the Stoic rock. I like the Stoic rock. It's a it's about the rock is hitting. It was the wave is continuously hitting the rock, continuously breaking the rock. But you stand firm. You stand firm, and you tame it. You tame the waves. You tame everything at peace. That's what I love about.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much. Next up is Mike.
Yeah, so one thing that hasn't been said, but it's part of the dichotomy of control, is the reserve clause. Every night I use the reserve clause because I have the things that I've meant to do during the day, and some things went well, some things didn't, but now it's in the past, and I have a new day tomorrow to attack what again what I was.
Mike, let me interrupt you for a second. We're going to be talking about reserve clause next. So can you briefly summarize what reserve clause is? That's something that we'll be talking about next time, so people get a little bit of preview. Go ahead.
So reserve clause is that I guess the one common metaphor, like Cicero uses, the archer. You can prepare, you can practice, but once the arrow leaves the bow, it's up to fate. You know, it's up to the wind, the weather, if the target is moving or falls down. The archer can prepare. So you can prepare and do your best, and then you are accepting of the results. That once it's out of your control, you can be at peace, that you've done your part. And even if you haven't done your part, you have to acknowledge that that's now in the past, and you have and beyond your influence, and you can start again. So
wonderful. All right, so I wanted to do this, this session in the middle of our study of the handbook, so people could talk about whatever they're getting from it. So we continue the handbook from next Saturday onwards. We're going to be talking about reserve clause next. I also want to tell you about the other meetups that you may be interested in that are related to this. I'm doing meetups at 2:30 p.m. on Sundays on what I call 4 functions. So this is about kind of balancing kind of these different 4 things that you have in your life. One is our intuitive emotional faculty on one side, and our reasoning and deliberative faculty on the other side. And then at the social level, there is kind of the personal values that we have with our family, friends, things that personally mean things to us. And then there are kind of transformative, kind of the large picture economic things that we need to take care of that support us. And how do you balance all these 4 things? So that's what it is about. So that's on Sundays at 2:30. On Tuesdays, we are doing a series on mindfulness, which is actually very closely related to this. We are going through a course on Coursera on mindfulness, where we are going to, and it's a pretty comprehensive course. For example, one of the sessions is on looking at different approaches to mindfulness. So the Buddhist approach, the Indian approach, the Stoic approach, and the approach which is popular in America today. How are all these related? So these are the two things that I would recommend, which are closer to this. But we do meetups every day. So if you go to 52 Living Ideas meetup and click on the calendar there, go to events and click on the calendar, you'll see all the events coming up. All right, folks. So it's always an honor to have so many incredible people come and talk about such incredible things so openly and learning from each other. So it's been wonderful, running these things. So thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Shrikant. Thank you.
Bye.